Well, Browns fans, it's one of the most highly anticipated days of the NFL offseason, schedule release day in the NFL. It has come, it has went, and we are on to now prognosticating what the entire schedule looks like and dissecting these things. And myself, Spencer German and Cole McDaniel, alongside with you from Browns Digest, to do just that with you less than 24 hours after the schedule has been released. Cole, first off, do you get as giddy and excited about schedule release day as much of the NFL fans out there do?
I would say not as much about schedule release day as the draft. The draft is certainly something that
That's
I'm
your time of
preparing
year. I
for.
know that.
Yeah, it's for months ahead of the draft. Is I'm preparing for it. I get excited about it. Schedule release day is fun, but it doesn't really come to the forefront of my mind until maybe like a week before because we once we get through the draft, then the focus kind of turns to time to get the rookies in for rookie minicamp and things along those lines, and then finally you can focus on the schedule release. So it hasn't been till the last couple of days it's really come to the forefront of my mind, but I guess it has been a big thing the last couple of days. It's exciting, but I think once the initial announcement's made, everybody just kind of moves on from it.
Yeah, I find it kind of funny because we know we already know the opponents. We know generally what the schedule is going to look like. But it's just kind of about. But I get the excitement of seeing the times, seeing primetime games, scheduling out your travel plans potentially. Um, and with Vegas on the schedule this year for the Browns, obviously it's a pretty big deal. A game that I'm sure there's plenty of Browns fans who are going to want to go take a weekend out there and enjoy it. So I get all that. But first and foremost, I want to just kind of break this thing down quickly with you. And I guess I'll start by just asking what you noticed. What was like maybe one of the first things that you noticed about this year's schedule, aside from the fact that, yes, we know they have 4 primetime games, which was actually more than I was anticipating. I kind of figured 3. You're always good for at least one big divisional matchup within the AFC North, I think, on a Thursday night, and the Browns are obviously giving you one of those in Pittsburgh. But for them to also end up with 3 additional primetime games, one against the Broncos 1 week after that Thursday night Steelers matchup, and that's a Monday night football game. You get the Dolphins in week 17, which is a Sunday night football, which is the true like prime time spot for football, obviously on Sunday, especially. And then the week before that, week 16, you get the Bengals on Thursday night as well. So you actually got 2 divisional games on Thursdays, and then the Monday and the Sunday thrown in. But aside from the primetime games, which I know is one of the big things everybody looks at, what stood out to you most about the schedule?
Well, the most notable thing for me is not what was on the schedule, what was really not on the schedule. The big thing is we knew who the opponents were for the Browns coming into this. So we knew that they were going to have one of the toughest schedules in the entire NFL this coming year. But good news for the Browns. They avoided Brazil. They avoided London. They avoided Christmas Day. They avoided
Thank God.
things that could have been added travel, plus then a weird Wednesday game for Christmas Day. So they avoided everything that was strange. And actually, when you look at it now, because the Browns don't have any international games, they actually are going to put on some of the least mileage in travel of any team in the NFL, which is a good thing because you have a ton of tough opponents, but they actually don't have to travel the distance of teams like the Los Angeles Chargers and some other teams out there. So I think because they were able to avoid international games, they were able to avoid Christmas Day. That actually bodes well for the Browns. That's the first thing that stood out in my mind.
Yeah, that's a good point by you. I like I said, thank God they avoided Christmas because that is a sacred day in my household, and I'm glad that we will have minimal work to do as a team here at Browns Digest on that day. Selfishly, I was kind of rooting for that, so thank the football gods for that one. But yeah, so one of the big things that I noticed sort of out of the gate here in relation to the schedule was, first of all, just you get after the first 3 weeks, this stretch where you go 3 straight road games, 2 against NFC teams. You get the Raiders in week 4, the Commanders in week 5, and then the Eagles in week 6. And then you follow it up with 3 straight home games in late October into early November with the Bengals, Ravens, and Chargers. And then that leads right into your bye week. And then off of that, I think another big thing I always kind of that draws my attention to it is how many late season home games do you have, especially for a team like the Browns, coming off a playoff season a year ago, have very high expectations this year with Deshaun Watson anticipating being back healthy and what he can bring to the table this year. And, new pieces kind of added in. Can they get to that Super Bowl conversation? I think it's interesting that after the bye week, they obviously have 8 games rather after that, and 5 of them are on the road. Only 3 of them are at home. You finish the season on the road at Baltimore to wrap things up, which could be a big game in terms of implications for the division, for potentially a wild card spot. That Sunday night football game against the Dolphins could have some pretty high stakes for a potential wild card spot in the AFC. So just the fact that you kind of get that set up on the schedule, but you also get a lot of your NFC opponents out of the way earlier on in the schedule. And then down the stretch, it really is about like playing a lot of these AFC teams that could be that you're going to be jockeying for position with, including 2 against the Steelers and then 1 against the Bengals and the Ravens, respectively. So I found that kind of interesting as well when we think about a team that's going to be trying to make a playoff push that time of year.
Well, I think I would take the Browns schedule over the Steelers schedule. It's interesting how so many of these teams, they get all these like division games in the second half of the schedule this year. At least they did that for the AFC North. The Steelers, of their last 8 weeks, they have 6 division games. The Browns, it's not quite that bad, but the Steelers, they have a gauntlet. The Browns, it's still tough, but the Steelers have it probably even worse.
Yeah, and I saw something, and I don't know if this was just a rumor or whatever, but I saw something pop up about how the reason the schedule got pushed back a week was partially because of the logistical stuff with the Steelers, because of that schedule. Like you said, 6 of their last 8 games are against divisional opponents. On top of that, there's a couple short weeks sprinkled in because they play the Ravens and then they play the Browns on a Thursday, and then they go Ravens again on a Saturday, which means a short week from the week before, and then a short week again into the Chiefs on Christmas Day. So yeah, the NFL did them no favors in terms of trying to give them a down the stretch of the season, give a brand name team, a team that's obviously pretty popular in NFL circles, a tougher schedule just because of what they wanted to do from like a marketing standpoint or a programming standpoint. So I found that interesting as well. I know as a Browns site, we're not supposed to feel bad for the Steelers, but that is a rough schedule down the stretch there. And I think both the Steelers and the Browns, 2 of a handful of teams, I want to say that maybe like 6 teams that have multiple games that they play on short weeks, because the Browns obviously have those 2 Thursday night games that they will play on short weeks as well. So any stretches in the Browns schedule, as we talk about the Steelers having a tough go down the stretch, any stretches that concern you, any stretches that you think are maybe to their benefit, just that kind of first glance here?
Well, the worst stretch is that end of the season where you hit week 14 to week 18 and you have the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Ravens. And that is a tough stretch. But where the Browns were done a favor is that their byes week 10, and then they have this gap between week 12 and week 13 where they play the Steelers on Thursday night, and then they don't play again until a Monday night game against the Broncos. So basically you get a bye week, and then like 2.5 weeks later, you get almost like this mini gap where they can rest. So at least the Browns will have time to rest to try to get healthy before they hit their toughest stretch of the season. The thing is, with how backloaded the schedule is this year, my main focus is the NFL actually did the Browns a bit of a favor with how they started. They get all those NFC opponents out of the way early. They actually have a somewhat easier schedule, I think, at least the first 5 weeks of the season. Sure, they start going on the road week 4, week 5, and that leads into week 6 against the Eagles as well. But I really look at that, and I think Dallas is probably on paper your toughest of those first 5 games. The thing is, you get Dallas at home week 1 for the home opener. The Browns defense was significantly better statistically at home than they were on the road last year. So if they can continue that defensively against a Dallas team that they now don't have the same center, Tyler Biadasz is with the Commanders. You have Smith is now the left tackle for the Jets. So they've lost 2 significant pieces on their O-line. They haven't really addressed the running back room. They're going to try to give Ezekiel Elliott, the football, to be the starting running back again. And this isn't Zeke of 5 years ago. So I don't trust that run game. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure put on Dak's shoulders to try to find an open CeeDee Lamb. And as long as that solid secondary, the Browns can slow down that offense passing wise, I think the Browns should be able to take care of business and get things started. They avoided London. They're going to Jacksonville, where the Browns probably should win that game against the Jaguars. Because again, at home last year, they were depleted health-wise. That's why it was probably a bit of a closer game, and the Browns still won that. Full, healthy roster. They should be able to go down there and beat Jacksonville. Giants, I like that game. I think the toughest one, actually, of that first 5 games may actually be the Raiders, just because the Browns sometimes have struggles when they go out towards the West Coast. They go west. The Raiders, they're improving. The Browns should beat them based on what they have on paper, but that is tough. But then Washington, again, they should still take care of business there. So ultimately, I look at it and I think that could be a stretch where you maybe go 4-1, maybe even 5-0 to start the year. And if they can do that, they put themselves in a great position considering the loaded back half.
Yeah, you remember that Raiders game? That feels like one of those they shouldn't lose, but they will lose type games for the Browns.
Yeah.
There's always one. There's always one in the schedule where it's like, yeah, they shouldn't lose this game, but they somehow lose it. But I think your analysis on just kind of the setup of this thing is fair. You can, after the bye week, you get week 11 against the Saints, which they're fair, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, like, again, on paper, I think week 12 on, and even if you want to go a little further, I think I'm including both Steelers matchups because that team's always going to play it pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
But week 12 on, I mean, that schedule's a gauntlet. Pittsburgh twice and two times within 3 weeks. You get the defending Super Bowl champs at home, yes, but obviously that's no easy feat. The Bengals with Joe Burrow potentially healthy. The Dolphins, who are they call themselves the fastest offense or the fastest team in football. And then the Ravens to round things out, another tough division game. That's a really, really tough stretch. But in that same vein, we talk about the Browns kind of proving themselves, right, and winning football games at that time of year, and sort of cementing that you are a contender. That stretch will really tell us a lot about this team too. But I do look at it the same way you do, where that early portion of the schedule feels like the stretch where they're going to have to sort of bank some wins, whether it's against home opener week 1 against the Cowboys, if they can steal one there, because week 1s are kind of fluky and teams are not their full identity hasn't been realized yet. Whether it's against the Jags, the Giants, the Raiders, Commanders, Eagles, a little bit of a softer portion there, where if you can bank some wins, that sets you up for, okay, if you have a few missteps in the second back half of the schedule, you'll be okay. Let's get out of here with this, because I know fans like to look at this thing and they think about they have these visions of Granger about, certain matchups on the schedule and ones they're going to travel to or games that they have circled. What matchups, 1 or 2 matchups are you like the most jazzed about? Whether it's like a storyline, a narrative coming in, or just one that you're like, man, I would love to go to this game because of where it is. What are the ones that you really got on your radar for this upcoming season, Cole?
Yeah, and we talked about the gauntlet at the end of the year. I will say the favor the NFL did is giving the Miami Dolphins at the very end of December, right? The colder, the windier that is, the more it helps the Browns, because
we saw how they fared in that playoff game against the Chiefs last year, where it was like below minus 10 degrees or whatever the hell it was. You're right. It's a good point.
They are predicated on a fast, high-speed offense, and the cold is not going to do them any favors. So I hope that the weather is miserable for December 29th against the Dolphins, because I think the Browns would fare quite well in that game. Just hopefully it's not a fluke, warm, nice weather day there at the end of December. But I think that's one I definitely circled, that sure, that's part of that gauntlet and that tough stretch. But the time that when that game was scheduled, that certainly does them favors. I'd say the other one that I scheduled would at least circle. I know some people, they'd like to go out to Denver just to be in Denver and take a look at that game. But don't forget that the Browns, they lost to Denver last year, and they have those struggles going out west. So sure, that might be the overlooked team in that back half of the schedule, but that's, even though I don't trust the Broncos to do well this year, and I think that they could be really bad based on their schedule. They could win maybe 2, 3, 4 games. That's it. But again, that could be one of those trap games wedged in between the Steelers. So you still can't overlook going out to Denver to Mile High against the Broncos.
I like those answers. I know people are going to get excited about the Cowboys because it's the Cowboys and it's week 1 and it's at home. So frankly, I get it. I don't know. Like the Cowboys are fine. I get it's a big time matchup, but I'm not going to use that as one of my ones where I'm circling it. It's the home opener. Of course, it's going to be circled by everybody. But for me, it's hard not to ignore that trip to Vegas just from if I'm putting a fan lens on things, because it's the first time the Browns are going out to Vegas since they've had a team. I'm just envisioning and I'm truly envisioning, Cole, like we know Browns fans travel well.
Yeah.
I'm envisioning that stadium being 60% Browns fans, especially if the Raiders are destined to have kind of another down year and they struggle a little bit out of the gate. Browns fans could take that stadium over, and that would be kind of a cool thing to watch, on top of the fact that it's in Vegas. So I think that's an enticing one for that reason. And then I also just think, late in the season, the Chiefs matchup was always going to be one that I had on my radar because, well, for multiple reasons. A, it's the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champs. B, Travis Kelce is a huge storyline in this town, even though he's never played for the Browns because he's from here. We try desperately to attach ourselves to him at any turn. I think actually over my shoulder here, I have the Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce bobblehead that they gave out of the Cavs game. So we know that's a big deal. And then on top of that, the potential. Not that I care personally so much. I'm not like Taylor Swift's. I'm kind of indifferent. Okay, she's fine. I have nothing against her. I don't necessarily listen to her music, but I have nothing against her. But the idea that Cleveland will be sort of center stage for this massive, sighting of the biggest pop star in the world is kind of a cool thing too. And I'm sure there'll be some angle of this spun by people regarding Travis Kelce bringing his girlfriend to his hometown for the first time too. It's like an episode of The Bachelor or something like that. So I'm definitely intrigued by that. And it'll be right around the holidays too. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is definitely going to be a big storyline. I would hope that maybe some of the Taylor Swift stuff dies down a little bit this year after, how
you don't know Taylor Swift fans then.
But
Taylor Swift fans.
But no, it's probably not going to happen. The NFL, they're going to take their viewership however they can get it, and if that's a couple 30-second shots, they're going to make do with that. But I would actually be shocked if she's not here for that game, considering again it's coming back to Cleveland where he grew up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. And note to self, I'm going to get Cole a bedazzled football in honor of Taylor Swift coming. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That feels like something they're selling at the NFL shop though for Taylor Swift NFL fans. All right, guys, we appreciate you listening, tuning in with us as always. A lot of good stuff going on over at si.com/NFL/Browns, where we are covering head to toe the schedule, toughest matchups, the best matchups, breaking down individual matchups. We have the full schedule over there if you haven't seen it yet as well. So all kinds of different stuff that you can dip your toes into. And as always, we'll have more content like this as we tend to do with the Browns Digest YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns, courtesy of si.com/NFL/Browns.